The man who faked his own death and started over is a story of deception and secrecy. It is a tale of a person who wanted to escape their past and create a new identity. This man, who we will call John, was tired of his old life and wanted a fresh start. He planned his fake death carefully, making sure to cover all his tracks. John's family and friends were shocked and saddened by his apparent demise. It is a story that raises many questions about the nature of identity and how far people will go to escape their past. John's motivation for faking his own death was rooted in his desire to escape his financial troubles. He had accumulated a large amount of debt and saw no way out. It is a common problem that many people face, but John's solution was extreme. He wanted to start over, free from the burden of his debts. John's decision was not taken lightly, and he spent months planning his escape. He knew that faking his own death would have serious consequences, but he felt it was the only way out. John spent months planning his fake death, making sure to cover all his tracks. He created a new identity for himself, complete with fake documents and a new backstory. It is a complex process that requires a lot of planning and attention to detail. John's plan was to stage a car accident and make it look like he had died. He would then assume his new identity and start his new life. John's plan was executed perfectly, and his family and friends were convinced that he had died. John's new identity was that of a successful businessman, with a new name and a new history. He had created a fake backstory, complete with fake family and friends. It is a difficult process to assume a new identity, but John was determined to make it work. He started his new life in a new city, where no one knew him. John's new life was one of luxury and comfort, and he was finally able to relax and enjoy himself. He had left his old life behind and was starting fresh. The investigation into John's fake death was thorough and extensive. The police were suspicious of the circumstances surrounding his death and decided to investigate further. It is a complex process that requires a lot of time and resources. The police interviewed John's family and friends, but they were all convinced that he had died. The police were unable to find any evidence of foul play, and the case was eventually closed. John's fake death was a success, and he was able to start his new life without any complications. Faking one's own death can have a significant emotional toll on a person. John had to deal with the guilt of deceiving his loved ones, as well as the stress of maintaining his new identity. It is a difficult process that requires a lot of emotional strength. John had to be careful not to slip up and reveal his true identity. He had to be constantly on guard, which was exhausting and stressful. John's emotional toll was high, but he felt it was worth it to start his new life. John's new life was one of freedom and possibility. He was able to pursue his passions and interests without the burden of his old life. It is a feeling of liberation and excitement. John was able to travel and explore new places, and he was finally able to relax and enjoy himself. He had left his old life behind and was starting fresh. John's new life was one of happiness and fulfillment, and he was grateful for the opportunity to start over. John's new life was not without risks, and he was always looking over his shoulder. He was afraid of being discovered and exposed, which would have serious consequences. It is a constant fear that can be overwhelming. John had to be careful not to reveal his true identity, and he had to be mindful of his surroundings at all times. He had to be prepared for the possibility of being discovered, and he had to have a plan in place. John's risks were high, but he felt it was worth it to maintain his new life. Faking one's own death raises many moral questions, and it is a complex issue. John had to consider the impact on his loved ones, as well as the potential consequences of his actions. It is a decision that can have far-reaching consequences. John had to weigh the pros and cons of his decision and consider the potential harm to others. He had to think about the morality of his actions and whether they were justified. John's decision was not taken lightly, and he had to live with the consequences of his actions. The psychology of deception is a complex and fascinating topic. John's decision to fake his own death was a result of his psychological state at the time. It is a process that requires a lot of planning and manipulation. John had to be able to deceive his loved ones, as well as himself, in order to maintain his new identity. He had to be able to compartmentalize his emotions and thoughts in order to keep his secret safe. John's psychology was complex, and his decision was a result of his unique circumstances. If John were to be caught, the consequences would be severe. He would face legal action, as well as the emotional toll of being exposed. It is a risk that John was aware of, and he took steps to minimize it. John would have to deal with the fallout of his deception, and he would have to face the people he had hurt. He would have to rebuild his life and regain the trust of his loved ones. John's consequences would be severe, and he knew it, which is why he was so careful to maintain his secret. John's new life was one of freedom and possibility, and he was determined to make the most of it. He wanted to leave a lasting legacy, and he worked hard to achieve his goals. It is a feeling of accomplishment and pride. John's legacy would be one of success and happiness, and he was grateful for the opportunity to start over. He had left his old life behind and was starting fresh, with a new sense of purpose and direction. John's legacy would be a testament to the power of second chances.